Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IRSSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uwayama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Thursday, November 30th, and we got a lot of news, Jamie. A lot of things are going on.
It's a busy time of year.
It's a busy time. Things kind of popped off when we, about an hour after we ended the show. Chansi Stuckey was relieved of his duties as the Notre Dame wide receiver coach, which was surprising to me. I think that there's been a lot of talk about the wide receivers this year, but I did not know that was coming, especially when it was announced. So we can get into that. Tobias Merriweather into the portal as well. That was much speculated, kind of all over the internets. I'd heard about that earlier in the week and was asked to hold the news, and so I did. And so that was kind of that was not a surprise. And there's a lot of speculation other places as well. So we can get into that. We're going to talk about all those things. Riley Leonard went into the portal yesterday, and obviously he is heavily linked to Notre Dame. So that seems to be a thing right now. So we're going to talk about that. What he could mean to the offense, Jamie. I looked at 2 full games of his yesterday. And I'm
oh my God! Just look at Joel Easton's. It would be an unbelievable seg from Joel Easton.
You know what?
Right
Let's steal. Let's steal it. Let's steal it
oh
right now.
wow! Well done.
Man, that's good stuff, Joel. I'll throw that up in a second. So there's that we'll get into. I saw a couple full games of Riley Leonard yesterday, and I was impressed with him, especially thinking about it as it relates to what I think or what we think the Notre Dame offense could be next year. So thank you everyone for tuning in. If this is your first time catching us, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so you know whenever it is we are going live. The links to the podcast are in the description below. Chansi Stuckey relieved of his duties. And speaking of being relieved of duties, if you need a new shirt for your upcoming interviews, get on ESQclothing.com and get a bamboo dress shirt. Hat tip to Joel Easton there for that. It's the holiday season. So look, the coaching carousel, there's no better time to take advantage of the special offered by Ga Wang, who is blowing up the chat right now. He's going off. This holiday season, no better gift for your husband, father, brother, son, nephew, who may have just recently lost their job. You've seen ESQ's bamboo dress shirt on all your favorite coaches and players. It's the world's most comfortable dress shirt made of sustainable bamboo fibers. The bamboo shirt is naturally odor resistant, wrinkle resistant, even machine washable. Also 3 degrees cooler than cotton, so you can sweat it out during your interview. Get ahead of the holiday season and use ISD25 to get 25% off your online purchase at ESQclothing.com or visit God Chicago showroom to get your perfect custom fit. We have some testimonials in the chat, Jamie. I think who? Let me find it. Kelly Kranger. I'm going to say. I bought a bamboo shirt from your store in October. Unfortunately, he was gone, but God was not there that day. But it's a great shirt. Staff was super friendly and helpful. So that could be you too. Get into ESQ headquarters and get your bamboo dress shirt. A lot of rumors going on in the chat. Let's talk about what has happened. Chansi Stuckey relieved of his duties, and let me get your take, Jamie. I have a good amount of thoughts on this, but I'd like to get your take on the dismissal of Chansi Stuckey.
One, I think, and it's always like it seems cliche when we talk about this, but he's a good guy. He's a good dude. It sucks when anyone loses their job, even if it's someone that maybe like fans aren't happy with. So that's never fun when someone loses their job, especially when they're a good guy like Chansi is. So that sucks from that perspective. But I mean, it is a business, and there was going to be changes on the staff. I think that was just obvious, and I think everyone. People were kind of waiting for like the Jared Parker thing to happen, for like the shoe to drop there. Yeah. But I think, and we don't know what else. There's going to be other changes. Like, it's just, that's what happens. Right. And it was a surprise. I was surprised by it. I didn't see it coming. But in saying that, it wasn't like I hadn't heard that there wasn't some dysfunction in the wide receiver room, that guys weren't happy. But I mean, guys aren't happy every year, so that's not like something new. But obviously, right now it's a very I'd say delicate time for the program and for Marcus Freeman. They kind of got to get it right. They got to
Yeah.
get it right, and they got to get it like going now. And especially if you are going to, um, pursue a bunch of guys in the portal, or try to finish out, try to make sure that you get like the best possible 2025 class. Uh, Also, just make sure that your receivers, if you aren't thinking that you're getting everyone to the level they should be, then, or managing the room like it should be,
Yeah.
you got to make a change, and that's part of the job. And Marcus Freeman hasn't had to fire anyone. This is his first guy that he's fired.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he was like one of like technically kind of like the first hires. And I know that was like probably Reese played a big part in it too. But I mean, I guess it's in that kind of respect, it's kind of a positive, because you're like, you have to be able to make these hard choices, and that's got to be something that's done. But it always sucks when someone is getting fired. And it should be mentioned, Del Alexander, and I mentioned it in Six Thoughts again today, and I hate to keep dunking on the guy, but he deserves to be dunked on. Like, the last 3 classes that he had, Aiden Thomas is the only guy left, right? And
Yeah.
so, because now that Merriweather is gone, I mean, Colsey technically, but I don't think it's like, whatever. We're not talking out of school to say that, like, I'm not sure Colsey's going to be back. Like, that is a guy that I wouldn't be surprised at all if he jumps in the portal as a grad transfer, right? So,
Yeah.
And you look at 2020, 2021, and 2022 classes, and next year it might be just Jaden Thomas. Like, that's a pretty bad situation for Chansi Stuckey to inherit. For anyone, I don't care who it is, that would be a bad situation to inherit. But you gotta do what you gotta do, and obviously Marcus Freeman made the decision that he thought was best for the program and best for the wide receiver room going forward.
Yeah. All right. Like I said, I have some thoughts on this, and I have some intel as well, just to kind of provide clarity. Mike in Oklahoma says another podcast made it appear that the entire team is separated drastically. That clarity doesn't exist. What is your overall opinions on the state of the team? I don't know where other podcasts are on this topic. So I'm not going to speak to them, and I'm not going to answer to that, because I didn't hear the conversation, so I don't know what they're referring to there. I would say that the issues that I heard about in the wide receiver room did not extend to the team, right? Which isn't to say anyone's wrong or whatever. I mean, opinions are opinions. That's fine. They can have those and whatever reporting they may have. But the issues that I had heard about in the room, the wide receiver room, did not extend to the team. So that's that. Now, I think, and I put this on the Irish Sports Daily board as well, just to kind of give some context to the whole kind of outlook and why Notre Dame has ended up where they are right now with the wide receiver position. You got to go back to like February and March, Jamie. Remember, like when Sam Hartman came in, right? They're going to throw more. It's going to be more wide open. Like you replace Drew Pine with Sam Hartman. And I think that a lot of players and members of the offense felt like we're going to be humming next year. Right. And look where it ended up. Right. That ended up not being the case. Now, this isn't to blame Jared Parker for that. This isn't to blame Chansi Stuckey for that. It's just like it adds to the discontent of the entire room, right? And the entire offense as a whole. For Sam Hartman as well, right? Like he did not expect this season to go the way that it did in terms of the style of play on offense, right? The wide receivers didn't think that. The leading receiver had what, 30 something catches? Like that's not that's not
It's
what
not what
anyone
anyone would have
expected.
expected. Yeah.
Right. Everyone thought they were going to do numbers, right? So when that starts happening and guys start getting unhappy, right? And I think you said it there, Jamie. Like, why are we here? Like, why are we where we are with this? And I think the main reason is that you said it just a second ago. Chansi Stuckey did not manage the room as well as he needed to. And that was his biggest kind of, I guess I'll call it a failing, because he ended up getting fired, right? And I think that was the biggest reason. Now, if we were to have Chansi Stuckey in this room talking to us right now, he would have reasons for that, right? There were times when Notre Dame had 3 freshmen on the field at once.
Yeah. Rico Flores led the receivers and snaps.
Yeah, like the talk for the last 5-6 years was Notre Dame can't get any freshmen on the field. And now they have 3 on the field at the same time, right? Like, and that is something that's like, that takes a lot of time. You got to spend time on that. You have to be doing that, right? Like you have to be coaching those guys. You have to be preparing them, right? And so if that leads other players feeling neglected or whatever it may be, then Chansi has to be communicating with those guys. He has to find a way to manage his room that way. And one of the things as it related to Tobias was, after the Duke game, when Tobias had a very poor game and he was essentially replaced in the starting lineup with Rico Flores, there wasn't a conversation with Tobias about that. Right now, you and I have talked about this before, and so I'm going to get to kind of your take on that as well, because I agree with you on this. But Chansi did not sit down with Tobias and say, "This is what I saw. This is what it is. We're going to drop you in the depth chart, and we're going to go with Rico. But this is what I need from you, X, Y, Z." Now, a player can do that as well, and a player should do that. And if a player wants to make it work in the room, if a player wants to make it work at the university, then that player will take it upon himself to go to the coach and say, "Coach, where am I at? What do I need to do? How do I get better?" Because if you can take the initiative to leave the program, then you can take the initiative to talk to your coach and say, "Coach, where am I at? Coach, what do I need to do? How do I make it work here?" Right? And that didn't happen. Okay, but that was part of the problems with Stuckey in that room. Is just like those conversations weren't happening, and that was part of the reason why you have guys like Tobias not happy, right? I can't speak to this specifically with Chris Tyree, but I think Chris Tyree was unhappy with his snap numbers, the amount of usage that he had. I mean, we talked about he was one of Notre Dame's most efficient players, and his usage just wasn't what you would think it would be.
What
right?
It would have been, considering his production. Like, yeah. I mean, you can understand at the start of the year, but then as the season went along, like we were all kind of like, yeah, he should get more touches. He should play more snaps. Yeah. It didn't really happen. And there are reasons for that. And some of them are valid reasons, but yeah, that's true. Like you have to be able to manage all of these things. And that's something too, right? Where, I mean, I'm not blaming, Stucky for Tyree choosing to go in the portal, because maybe you would have chosen any or whatever, right? But that is something too that you have to think about all these things going forward, right? And I also think too, like, our friend Chris Wilson kind of brought up how Stucky in the preseason, in I believe it was in the spring, was talking about how Tobias had this like. And whatever, he threw the name out, so it's kind of on him. He threw the name out Randy Moss when he talked about his ability to separate through there. First of all, probably shouldn't have done that. Probably shouldn't have used that comparison. Totally unfair to the kid. But if that's what you really think about someone, then it's also partially on him to be like, I got to get this guy out of him.
Yeah.
Especially given what you have in the room, and you don't have enough guys. You don't have enough guys, period. and you already are down. Thomas is hurt, and Greathouse is hurt, and all of these kind of things. So that kind of stuff does matter. It really, really does. Like, and let's be honest, like no one wants to have to manage all these personalities and their kids and their parents and all this kind of stuff. But it is 100% part of the job. It is part of the job. That's part of everything. And it's just like, it's why guys want to coach in the pros and they don't want to coach whatever, because they want to coach adults and adults, because an adult would be like, hey, I'm going to do this. And guess what? If you're not doing it, you're cut. Right. Like that's kind of how it works in the league, but it doesn't work like that. And the guys, because too, you can't, because of the portal, you have to treat kids differently than you would coach them before.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff matters. And I also want to just add in the fact that I think we're looking at the portal. And first of all, none of these are, I think, like catastrophic losses for Notre Dame. Like I wouldn't classify any player that has gone in the portal as a catastrophic loss for Notre Dame. Replaceable players, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But some of these guys would have stayed if things were better. And it's not just what you kind of said, Greg, about like, you know, the offense was doing a certain way. If they kept up what they were doing in like the first 4 games or whatever, compared to whatever. Yes, that's part of it. The other part is winning. Because if they were 11-1 and they were a CFP contender, guys are sticking around for that, and then maybe something else changes during that time. Maybe they go into the portal after or whatever, right? But that's why all that kind of stuff matters, and why when you aren't 11-1 or 12-0 and you're 9-3, it changes. It changes, and first of all, I don't blame anyone for going in the portal for if you're looking for a better opportunity or another chance to play. Because if I was Merriweather too, I mean, there's a bunch of ways, and you said it on Irish Sports Daily as well, Greg. He's only got 2 years left.
Yeah.
So if he's there and he's like, well, Rico Flores is starting at the field in front of me, and he's younger than me, he has to look at that. And you could say, well, yeah, maybe he should fight for, the spot or whatever. Maybe he's got to do this, whatever. But I totally understand someone being like, I want to go somewhere where I'm going to have the best opportunity to start, another opportunity to start and play, because guess what? I only have this much time. And the other thing is, it's not COVID with the extra year anymore. These guys don't get an extra year. And all these guys benefit. First of all, people should remember, anyone who's criticizing Chris Tyree for leaving or whatever, saying he loves Notre Dame. I saw a couple people throw this out. It's like, he wouldn't even have a year of extra eligibility left. He stayed his full time. He's got the extra year because of COVID. After next year, there are no extra COVID years for the older guys on the team. So it's a different dynamic. And now you'll see it sped up. And Merriweather's no different than Styles and Culley and Buckner last year, who being like, well, I got 2 years. So what am I going to do? I want to do something. I want to have a shot to play in the NFL. And they took it. And I'm not saying it was the best decision for all those guys, but that's why they made the decision.
And specifically on Tobias, like something that was consistent when talking about him was, I kept hearing 2 years left, 2 years left. And we have to remember, last year, he was trending up. He was becoming a bigger part of the game plan. And then he got a concussion. And that was after the 5th game. And so he didn't have the opportunity to redshirt at that point. If he had got a concussion after the 4th game, that's an easy redshirt. He'd have 3 years left after this year. And so I think it would have been a situation for him where it's like, I can be a little bit more patient, see who Notre Dame brings in, right?
But my degree and all of that.
Yeah, he got my degree, but he can't because he only had 2 years, right? And so that was a consistent theme with him. And so I think that made it difficult. And the other part too is, like, with Tobias, it was just, you look at it as a whole, and there was just a failure to thrive on that point, which is not necessarily like on his part or Notre Dame's part. It's just like he was a guy that everyone said, like, how many times did we have a conversation in the offseason? It's like Tobias is the key to unlock what this passing game can be, right? We heard it all the time. He was not ready for that. He simply was not. And so then he becomes like a whipping boy on, like, how many times the people were giving up on him. It completely gave up on him. And I think he hears that, right? He notices that. He knows that. He catches the pass against Central Michigan and he's doing this thing, right? Like,
social media and all that.
Like he knew, he absolutely knew that. He absolutely felt that. And I think for him, it was like, you know what? I only have 2 years. I can't sit around and wait for them to run the kind of offense I think they're going to run, to bring in the kind of coach that I think is going to fit with me, right? And I think he just said, you know what? I need to move on, right? Now, look, were there little things that happened? Like, are there little stories that we could tell about, this happened here and this happened here, and Chansi Stuckey did this and this other thing that happened? Like, yeah, we could, but like, that's just dishing gossip. Like, I think there's a lot going on right now about like telling little stories about why a relationship ended. And I don't think that that's like doing anyone any good to talk about that stuff. It's like Jamie, how like a friend of yours breaks up in a relationship, or right? And they're telling the story. It's like, yeah, they came home and I had dinner made and he didn't really appreciate it. And he went and sat on the couch and played video games. And it's like, oh yeah, man, that's bad. Like, that's a bad guy. It's like, really, just like, look, it doesn't matter. Today, like the reason we are here today is because it wasn't working out. It didn't work out for him, and it could work out. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not sad that he's leaving. That is 100% like not how I see it. You can't leave like guys like that. You can't have them leaving your program. Like, it's just, he moves different. He is a physical, like the way he is. You want to try to have it work out. Now, a lot of the problems with Tobias has to put his hand up and say, hey, like, I didn't perform either. He was given a ton of opportunities. He was the starting wide receiver. When Jaden Thomas got hurt, he was moved to the boundary. There were plenty of opportunities, right? And so, like, it's not like Notre Dame just sat him on the bench and didn't try to work with him. He got a ton of snaps. He got a lot of snaps, right? And so it's unfortunate that he didn't want to wait, and he didn't trust Notre Dame to bring in someone that could develop him, right? But it's unfortunate, but that is what it is. And so he made that decision, and Notre Dame then has to deal with it, and try to weather the storm here, because it is like you said, it's a tenuous situation in the wide receiver room right now.
Oh, just wanted to mention too, with the Xander mentioned to Prince Cully, he didn't play this year. He had concussion. He's got bad. So I don't know if anyone knew, but he had concussion problems at Notre Dame too. Yeah. So I don't know what his future is, to be honest, in football. So it's unfortunate for him because he didn't really get a chance to, whatever, show like, prove Notre Dame wrong or whatever. But I mean, I think we don't really need to rehash any of the things. I think he wasn't, he didn't play at a level where I thought he was going to play a lot anyway. So,
and I don't know that Lorenzo Styles, I don't know that he played in anything more than 4 games, right?
He didn't. He got a red shirt.
Right. Yeah, so he got a red shirt, right? And so that's something that Tobias could do, right? Is he could he could go somewhere, take a red shirt, develop, and then play his 2 seasons. And that's something that just wouldn't really happen at Notre Dame, right? Like, you don't want to do that. And so ours Zalamia says, any chance any of these portal guys end up back at Notre Dame? Doubtful. I would say no on that, especially for Tobias, because here's the other part. I think that once Notre Dame will fight for you. Like, I think Marcus Freeman wanted Tobias to stay, and I think he tried to get him to stay at the university. But once you go into the portal, I think the dynamic kind of changes for them. Like you would have to go then re-recruit them. And it's like the fact that you have chosen to walk away, like it skews things in the way of the coaching staff, right? And then you look at like, okay, like this is how it was when you were here. Is that something that, you know, we really want to get back into, right? And so like I feel like once you make the decision, that's kind of it. But what do you think, Jamie?
I mean, it's always possible, whatever, because I mean, it certainly happened. And I mean, it happened with Houston Griffith, but like, most guys have already made up their mind and have been thinking about it forever. It's usually not a rash decision, you know? So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. And I also think once guys are out, once they're like out, like you probably don't want them. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, like
I kind
I'm
of think
saying
like
the
this guy's not
dynamic
gonna,
is different.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's difficult there. Everyone's talking about stays in the chat, like that's a thing that happened. I haven't seen anything like that, so I don't know. Did you see that, Jamie? Is anything that came up there?
I didn't see anything. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if it happens.
I mean, he just was like absent from the Stanford game, you know, like like he just didn't play, and I don't know. Oh, okay, it's just rumors. So I mean, that was that. We didn't know. There was no clarity there if it was an injury. I think maybe he was sick. Did it say it was sick?
Something like that.
Yeah.
It was something like it was like it was a very like late thing that they mentioned. But I mean, if you look at it, like I've always wondered why. I know the one thing is at tight end, they play multiple tight ends. You're gonna play a lot, right? But you can go to another place. He could start at 90% of Power 5 schools.
Yeah.
He could. So if someone decided to do that, I mean, I couldn't blame somebody if you're going to be the number 2 or number 3 guy.
Yeah.
At Notre
I mean, if he
Dame,
went to Georgia, like he's from Georgia, so if
he's
Georgia
not going
offered
to start at Georgia. That's
but I'm saying,
one of the
but for him, like we will sit here and have a conversation that he won't start for Georgia, but that he may feel
he
like,
wouldn't
yeah,
start
I can
for
go.
I can guarantee he wouldn't start for Georgia. Georgia might be the only team because they are similarly loaded with tight ends. He'd be like a one of many kind of guys, right? So, but he could go to like, I don't know, he could start at an SEC school and be like, he could go to LSU and be like their starting tight end, or maybe not. I can't remember.
No, because they've got a good. He's a sophomore.
Yeah, but he could go to a lot of places where he's like automatically steps in. He's tight end 1. So that's just one of those things. So yeah,
it's weird because like he could go a lot of places and be tight end 1, but you could be tight end 1 at Notre Dame too. You could do that.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
pretty good school to be tight end 1. You know, like
the other thing is that, I mean, look at what happened with Evans this year, and we don't know what's going to happen with Evans.
Yeah,
and you know, and when he's going to be back, and also too, like, all it takes too is just like Mitchell Evans was not like the main guy. I mean, he was the main guy in terms of snaps, but he wasn't like the number 1 target until the Ohio State game. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, Mitchell Evans is like that dude now, right? So it can flip quick. You know, it can flip quick. So I mean, I certainly think staying at Notre Dame is a good decision for a tight end because you're going to develop and you're going to play in the NFL. Yeah. That's just what you do. But you know, we'll see.
Robert Hallecky is asking, do you guys think only 1 portal wide receiver or 2? Think targeting a big end and tackle is needed as well, or go with young guys? Let's answer the wide receiver one first. What do you think, 1 or 2?
I think 2. I think 2. I think you got to take 2. You know, and hopefully you get like at least 1 guy who's like a top guy that you know is going to be someone that you can count on. Right. Like that this guy is going to start for us somewhere. He's going to be productive. He's going to provide something. He's had that kind of production at his previous school. That would be great. And I mean, I think you want to take guys who've been productive at the previous schools anyways. I think that just makes sense. But, you know, you don't have to get two guys to be like, these are automatically the two best receivers on the team, because I think like Greathouse is going to take a step next year. Flores is going to take a step. Faison is going to take a step next year. You know, Jane Thomas is hopefully going to be 100% healthy. I mean, he should be and be a dude, right? So like they should have good options, but I think right where you're at, just they need more bodies. They need more bodies. And I think like, so I'm not saying you know, you don't want to get like a Cam Smith and Freddie Canteen. You don't want that where you guys, you're like just desperate and you're just trying to get guys just to get guys. But if you get guys that you can help, like that changes the dynamic of the thing. Because you're going to play Texas A&M at the beginning of the season, like you're going to need guys to make plays in that game. So if you can get a couple guys that you think can make plays in that kind of environment, like would be huge.
I mean, you need some seniors in the room.
Yes.
Like you need some upperclassmen. Like, look, all that's there is Jaden Thomas. That's it. Tobias is out. He would have been a junior. Tyree's out. He would have been a senior. You don't have any upperclassmen. You have one guy. And like that, you need multiple. You need someone who to come in and play a boundary receiver. Someone needs to come in and play. Colsey, we think may not be on the roster, right? Like, so that's another one where it's just you need some guys. And so they need a couple. And someone asked about Chris Mitchell. I want to ask you about this. John Imperial asked, is Chris Mitchell a realistic option? He is from FIU. I know he was a senior, so presumably he's at least in position to graduate. I don't know if he has graduated, which makes it a lot easier. What do you know about Chris Mitchell? Let's put it like that. I know he put up over 1,000 yards for FIU this year.
I haven't watched a ton of him, just briefly highlights. But I believe like he is definitely like a guy that would be on the radar. He's on the radar. So, I mean, I can't say that like this guy is going to be this for Notre Dame, if whatever. I haven't watched enough of him yet. There's a lot of other stuff going on, so that I've been kind of preoccupied with, you know, but I do think that he is, yes, on the radar. He's a guy to monitor.
We're monitoring Chris Mitchell. Lauren Grad, let me get to this. There it is. Lauren Grad says we will have 5 very good sophomores next year. For sure. Absolutely. You know, that's 100% correct. But you do want some upperclassmen in there. Like you do. I don't think this happens. Like, honestly, I don't think this happens with Tobias if Kevin Austin is on the roster. Someone like that. Someone like Chase Claypool. Someone like Miles Boykin. You know, like I just don't think it happens. Like he can sit behind someone who it's like, this guy is a friggin' pro. You know, Javon McKinley. Ben Skoranek, right? Like these guys, it's like, this is how it's supposed to look. This is how you work. These are the types of catches you need to be making. There was no example for him this year. Yeah. Especially when Jaden goes out, you know, like it really hurt. It hurts. And that's what I'm saying. Like you have to look at the whole situation and in its entirety, not just for the wide receivers themselves, but also for Chansi Stuckey, right? He did not have an easy situation to navigate. And in some ways, he did really well in getting those freshmen ready to go. Like the sophomores that we're happy about, like Rico Flores, Jaden Greathouse. He got Chris Tyree looking like a good football player, right? Just turned into a wide receiver. Jordan Faison as well. That was a very difficult situation for him to navigate. On the one end, he did a very good job. On the other end, right, the part where it's like you got to stay on them, you got to be communicating with them, you got to be letting them know, like, hey, you're important to me. You're important to this program. Stay with me. He didn't do that part, and it cost him, right?
You know what?
It's difficult.
I not even the part about managing, but I also think it's just good to have those good players because people are fine if the guy in front of you is like an NFL guy, a guy who's going to be in the draft, a guy who is clearly better than you. Like, it's so obvious he's better than you at that point in your career. Like, that's why people are, like someone like Miles Boykin, it didn't happen for him right away. Chase Claypool, it did not happen for him right away, right?
But Miles Boykin in his third season had worse stats than Tobias did this year.
Yeah.
In his third year.
It didn't happen for those guys right away. But when you have, so you have Chris Brown there, who's like a vet and a good player, right? Not an NFL guy, but like a borderline NFL, UDFA type guy.
Yeah.
He's a good player. And you have Corey Robinson, you got all these, you've got Will Fuller, and you got Torrey Hunter Jr. You have good players at receiver. And then when you're not playing, you see these guys are at a certain level. It's like, well, now, I got to get to that level if I want to play. And then all of a sudden, like, Equanimeous St. Brown, it's like, you're like, well, this guy's starting and he's balling. So, okay, like, am I going to not play because it's like, you can accept it because you're like, I got to get to this level. If you're being truthful about it and not just looking at, that's fine. It's just like, that happens at every position. It's like, I'm willing to wait because I still want to play here. I like it here, whatever. But I also know that I'm not getting cheated out of playing because I'm not thinking about it in that terms. Well, and the other thing is the parents aren't thinking about it in those terms either. Like, why aren't you playing? Why aren't you playing? Well, Miles Boykin is the boundary. And, that's why I'm not playing the boundary and getting all the targets, right? Like, why am I not playing? Well, Chase Claypool is like having an All-American type season, right? Like, all this kind of stuff, like that kind of stuff does actually, it's a big factor in it. It's like, well, why am I not, Liam Eichenberg, and I understand this is like O-line tend to think different about things too, but like Liam Eichenberg was a very highly rated recruit. He didn't play until year 3. It's like, well, everybody in front of me is like an NFL guy. It's gonna be like a first round pick.
You're sitting behind Mike McGlinchey. He got picked 9th. Like, you're gonna whine about that?
Yeah, like it's a totally different thing, right? It's a different dynamic. And I don't think, like, people want to play, they want to, whatever, but it's like, I guarantee you, if say the linebackers played way better than they did last year, if the linebackers played this year how they did last year, then, and someone like Prince Cully, maybe he doesn't leave, because he's like, man, I'm actually not good enough, but I'm going to get there, whatever. So that it does change the dynamics of everything.
Yeah. A couple questions here. Let me try to. Oh, Rajon asks, is Marcus Freeman blaming Stucky for all these guys leaving because he didn't handle their egos well enough? I don't think blame is the right word. It's like he's holding him accountable in the most extreme way you can. Like, it can't be this way. And for him, it's like, you know what? I just need to make a change. I can't trust that it's going to be okay. I think there were just too many guys who had kind of the same concern. And it's so, again, it's not like Chansi Stuckey did a terrible job. It's not like he was so bad or whatever. It's just that it's a big problem and you can't have the problem. And Marcus Freeman's like, I just need to find someone else who I believe can do it. That's it. I mean, I don't think it's that deep, other than like, he just felt like it was bad enough to where I got to make a move. And that's kind of how it was. Let's see. There's another question here about any intel regarding the wide receiver coach. I would be stunned if they didn't try to go after Jamarcus Shepard again. I think he was the other finalist, and now he's at Washington. Washington's obviously done a very good job. You put a name in your list of coaches. Jamie's always got a Rolodex of coaches that he feels like could fill the role. And you had a name, Jamie, the wide receiver coach at Wisconsin, who was formerly at Cincinnati, worked with Marcus Freeman. Can you remind us of him?
Yeah, Mike Brown. He's the associate head coach and wide receivers coach at Wisconsin. So he was obviously that he was there the entire time that Marcus Freeman was there at Cincinnati. So he obviously went with Luke Fickell. He's a guy who, they weren't recruiting top guys, and they found like athletes and made them into NFL draft picks, right? They got guys like Alec Pierce and Trey Tucker and Tyler Scott, who were just like considered like the latter two were like track guys. The other guy was like more of like a multi-sport athlete, a good track guy too, but like that became NFL draft picks, right? So I think, he's obviously, the connection there is obvious, right? So that, kind of makes sense from that perspective. I think he's a guy that I'm certain that they would at least talk to, and we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, like you mentioned, Shepherd, I mean, there's a bunch of different directions they could go. I mean, you can check out Irish Sports Daily. I got like a list of more guys that you can take a look at that are, that I think are pretty qualified, or guys who are like kind of like rising up in the industry. But I also say too, like, it might be something like as simple as like Daryl Hazel was the coach at Purdue when, Marcus Freeman, he was Marcus Freeman's boss at Purdue, worked with Jared Parker there too. Was a wide receivers coach at Ohio State. Like, that was his thing. He's like a veteran guy. He's been an offensive coordinator. There's obviously like a trust and familiarity there in like a kind of like in the way that John McNulty was kind of similar to Tommy Rees, right? So there's that kind of guy too, who maybe not the sexiest hire in terms of the name of like this guy's this rising star or whatever. Certainly not where like Jamarcus Shepherd is now. Mm-hmm. But I think when people were like, no one was like, man, John McNulty, what a great hire. And it turns out he was pretty good. He was a good recruiter. He was a good coach. It certainly helped with the offense too. So I wouldn't say that isn't a possibility either, that they could go that direction. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things. And Xander, I don't know if you know how it works with life, but people hire people they know. That's what it is. They know because that's what they know what they're going to get. I mean, he did know Chansi Stuckey, and
I mean, like Brian Kelly went with Mike Denbrock because that's who he knows from Cincinnati at LSU, and they have the Heisman Trophy winner.
It's like you can say like, man, Mike Mickens really should have got rid of, or they should have really got rid of Mike Mickens because Freeman worked with them before. It's like, no, just sometimes guys aren't fits and they're not, or whatever. It doesn't work out in this situation, whatever. But you don't take someone off the list because it's someone you know. And most of the time in coaching, in any kind of thing, it's connection, some kind of connection you made with someone. And sometimes that's not the best hire, but sometimes it is. So I mean, like McNulty, like I said, that was a guy that Rees knew. That guy made the offense better. He made the offense better because he was there. So, I don't like, I mean, Mike Denbrock also, called plays for Notre Dame's 2015 offense, the most successful offense that the Brian Kelly era. So, I mean, he's a good coach.
You're going to go with someone you trust. Like that is just, everyone talks about like, oh, he's doing this is for his job. This is for his career. You're going to go with someone you trust. Like that is the way people operate, right? He has to make it work. You're not just going to go with a bunch of strangers all the time. Right. So you have to go with the person that you trust is going to do the best job. And so like, even for us, like we needed a new intro song and we needed new intro music and graphic. And so what do? We went with someone we trusted, and that was VSRmediacompany.com. Founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh, VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at VSRmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 800-9106. All right. So speaking of trusting and that sort of thing, Riley Leonard's officially in the portal, Jamie. And Ga Wang. You know what? It's always nice to get from the people, and my guy Ga, who's the best. Ga's the best in the biz, on the shirt game. But Riley Leonard officially in the portal, Jamie. And I just I hear people, like, you look at some of the stats and you look at he's had some clunkers, right? He's had some absolute clunkers on his resume there. Poor completion percentage, low yards, poor quarterback rating, or a quarterback efficiency rating. But I look at his skill set and I think, man, this really translates to what Notre Dame wants to do offensively. And I don't know. It seems like it seems when you go in the portal and you have a do not contact, and there's all this smoke around him. Seems to me they're just crossing T's and dotting I's on this thing.
That it does seem that way. And it's typically that way. Like, I'd say, like, Ivan Taylor going to commit tomorrow. I mean, I don't think people are like not thinking it. People are thinking that it's Notre Dame. Like, it's how it works most of the time. By the way,
Wang is thinking that it's Notre Dame.
Yeah. By the way,
We have to
Ivan
wait,
Taylor, big pickup for Notre Dame. If
real good
commits,
football player.
If he commits,
real good football player.
It's a big pickup. So Leonard, okay, I think that's the way to kind of look at it too. Is one, okay, he first season as a starter, 2022 season for him, right? By the way, came in, Duke was 121st in returning production on offense. And it's Duke. So they didn't have like 4 stars and 5 stars waiting in the wing. So it wasn't a great situation that he inherited. And they did pretty well with it, like actually really well. And so I think you got to consider the context of that. You also consider the context of, I don't think he had a receiver or a tight end in the last 2 years that is going to the NFL. Like, is going to ever play a snap in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, that is a thing. Certainly not as way less talent than Sam Hartman had at receiver, is what I would say too.
No one close to A.T. Perry. No, not even
no one close to here at A.T. Perry, or Donovan Green, or even Jamal Banks. Yeah. So I think you can look at a lot of things with this game in terms of like the accuracy numbers overall, right? Like, but he's 70% adjusted completion percentage, right? Which is like takes out the drops and all the catchable passes that like should have been caught or whatever, right? And takes out other like throwaways and stuff like that too, right? So that's pretty good. It's not great, but it's pretty good. And it's not elite, but I've seen him make like middle of the field. That's what I always look for. Do you make middle of the field throws with anticipation and accurate? And I've seen him do that. So he is capable.
I saw him. I saw an example of that. Just yesterday.
Yeah. So he has the arm talent. He has the brain to make that. Also comes from a pro style system. Was originally recruited by David Cutcliffe. Had the 1 year in their system too, to kind of learn and develop to, one of the best quarterback developers of the last, whatever decades. Like, so he's got that up his sleeve too. He was the 28th ranked player going into the preseason on Dane Brugler from The Athletic, who's their NFL draft guy, his top 50 going into the season. So obviously his season didn't go as planned because of getting hurt at Notre Dame. And he basically, they shut it down. Like, his ankle was so bad after whatever. He shut it down. He tried to play, but he was bad in those other games because he couldn't move. I don't know if anybody watched the Florida State game, but like they had to yank him because he couldn't move, right? And so he had, 11 design runs against Notre Dame. He had 0 in the next 2 games. So it just kind of shows what he is. He's great, a legitimate dual threat. Notre Dame fans should be aware of it. He made a ton of plays with his legs against them, made a ton of plays with his legs against Clemson. So you can't say, oh, he's doing this, racking up these numbers. Like, no, he went against teams with better athletes than 99% of the teams that he was playing and made plays with his legs. He's a good athlete. He's a very, very good athlete. And I also think there's a difference between a guy like him and Sam Hartman when you're taking. First of all, you're taking Sam Hartman was a guy you're taking after his 5th year. So he's going to his 6th year. Leonard is his 4th year. He started about maybe 20 games, maybe even less than 20 games in his career. Sam Hartman had over 50 starts in his career. So there's a big gap between that, like how many reps and what this guy has done and kind of like where Hartman was at relative ceiling. And that's before you even get into he's got better traits than Hartman. He's bigger. He's a better athlete. I think he's got a better arm, I would say. And he's made, there's less turnover worthy plays. Like his turnover worthy play percentage is less than Hartman's was at Wake, right? So it's not to say that he finished 28th in 2022. He finished 28th in ESPN's QBR, and that's like a metric that takes into your running the success of plays. So it's like, did this guy take sacks? Did this guy throw a pick? Did this guy do this in this situation? Did he convert third downs? Whatever. All these kind of things. It takes success rate, EPA. All it's kind of like all into it and looking at the kind of ratings, and that's how they take it. So I do think QBR is actually like a pretty valuable metric. It's a good one, especially for college quarterbacks. So 28th, certainly. Does Notre Dame want the 28th best quarterback in the country? No, they want like a top 10 quarterback. But I think he has the potential to maybe be a top 10 quarterback. And that's kind of the point. You're not going to get Drake May. Everybody wanted Drake May last year. He didn't even go in the portal, right? Really, there's only been one kind of for sure thing, Drake May type of guy that has gone in the portal in the last few years, and that was Caleb Williams. Yes, and then he was awesome, right? But no one was like Michael Penix Jr. is going to be a Heisman contender. No one was like Bo Nix is going to be a Heisman contender. Bo Nix, so his best year at Auburn, 60.2 completion percentage, 7.0 yards per attempt.
I mean, he was a joke.
He was not. He was not considered a guy. Like Oregon got him. It was not. It was like, yeah, is he going to win the job? Like people weren't. It was not a slam dunk that he was going to be the thing. And he had, the OC there at the time had him at Auburn, so there was familiarity there. So there was that kind of connection, but it wasn't like a slam dunk that he was going to be. This year, he's 78.4% and 9.7 YPA. So it's a massive difference. And some of it is situation. He's got a better team around him at Oregon right now than he had at Auburn. That's for sure. Some of it is the guy got better. And so he left after his 3rd year and he got better. So that is very possible with Leonard. And I'm not saying that Leonard is going to be a Heisman contender or that is going to it's going to happen, but the possibility of him being a better version of the guy he's Duke is out there. And I would say it's like a pretty good percentage that it could be the case. And obviously you got to surround him with talent. I think there's still, even if just Notre Dame had what they have right now, they'd still have better talent than Duke in terms of their skill guys and their backs, their line, all that kind of stuff. But, and if you add some more guys in the portal and stuff too, then it can, go up even from there. So And it's not even to say that Steve Angeli or even Kenny Minchie or CJ Carr couldn't end up being the quarterback by the end of the year or later in the year, or maybe even one of those guys wins the job from them and it's just that good, period. And that's fine. But you know that Riley Leonard has not just won games, but been the reason why they won games at Duke against Power 5 teams, that ACC teams that Notre Dame is going to play and going to have to beat. So that's part of it. The other thing is, this guy just played against Notre Dame. They were down 13-0. He led them back in the game to 14 points. Like, he was the biggest reason why they came back in that game. And obviously some of that was his running, but that is also part of the equation of why you're
that is actually like the biggest thing to me.
The biggest like attractiveness.
Notre Dame has the best pass defense in the nation. Literally, #1 pass efficiency rating against. They are the best. Like, Duke could not do anything against them. So it's like, we don't know what to do. We're just going to run the quarterback. And that's how they got back in the game. Like, it's a situation where if you get in a game where it's just not clicking, like we saw this year, against Louisville, against Clemson, where it's like, we can't move the ball. We can't do anything with this passing game right now. You could just run your quarterback, and that is a viable option, right? And like, to me, when you look again, and Lauren Grad's asking about like if we bring in Leonard, now we have an inexperienced quarterback in 25, which is true. I would rather do it this year. Which year would you guys prefer? Now, I've been consistent on this point for the past probably month. If it's not Riley Leonard, then I think you could make a real case for saying, you know what, we'll bring in somebody, but we really want it to be like one of Angeli or Minchie, right? But it is Riley Leonard. And I think Riley Leonard is a guy where it's like the style of quarterback that he is, you go with it. You go with it. Because I think in 25, I've been heard enough times from a number of different people. They really like Kenny Minchie. They like him a lot. They do. And he looks good throwing the ball. I'll say that. And so I just think there's something there. They like Steve Angeli as well, but they really like Kenny Minchie. And so I think they are completely comfortable going to at least him or Angeli in 2025 and bridging it that way. But if you have a guy like Riley Leonard, I just think that for what the offense wants to be and for the skill set that he has, I think you have to do it. I do. And I've been consistent on that. So that's kind of where I come out there on that conversation. And again, the running. If Riley Leonard was a better, we wouldn't have said it at the time because we didn't know, A, he wasn't an option, but B, we didn't know what the offense was going to look like when Sam Hartman signed on. Yeah. In hindsight, Riley Leonard would have been a better option for this Notre Dame football team. They beat Ohio State with Riley Leonard. They do. We said that he's basically like a scaled up version of Ian Book.
Yeah.
He has a better arm talent, and he is a bigger. real athlete running the ball, like really good athlete.
Breaks a ton of tackles.
Yeah.
Okay. This is another way that I think Notre Dame fans should look at it as well. Okay. Well, first, this is a way that everyone should look at it is Marcus Freeman needs to win next year. He needs to win. He needs to make the playoff. It's 12 teams. So he's got to be in the top 12. No one's, saying for sure that he's got to be a top 4 team, whatever, but they got to make it in year 3 based on how the first 2 years went. I think that's, I'm not saying that he's going to get fired if he doesn't make it or anything like that, but you don't want to have that not happen with where the things in the program, because that's how things can spiral out in a bad way. Where all of a sudden people talking about you in a, hey, he's really done a lot of good things I don't know if he's the guy. that's already started to happen with some people, right? So that's just something that they got to win next year. So if you think that Riley Leonard gives you the best chance to win next year, then that is a real thing. The other thing is you realize that you're playing Texas A&M at the beginning of the season. Now Mike Elko's going to be there. They're going to keep most of those guys on defense. They were an elite defense this year. They were one of the best, I think they're like a top 15 defense in the country. I'll have to double check. Top 20 at the very least. But, most of the guys from their defense are coming back. So that's something to think about. They're 15th. So they're a top 15 defense in DF plus. So that is, something that you got to think about is you got to go in and you got to win that game, because if you win that game, you look at the schedule too. There's not like a lot of big name teams in it. So if you lose that game, it's a little bit like 2019 where, Notre Dame was good in 2019 and they went 10-2, but they lost to only two big games that mattered, Georgia and Michigan. And obviously they lost Michigan in a really bad way. And so they didn't even end up being in a New Year's Six bowl, even though they were New Year's Six good. They were that level of being good, but they didn't get into it because of where they're at. So think about one, you can look at Clemson in 2018, beginning of the season, Trevor Lawrence, not the starter. Kelly Bryant was the starter. Mm-hmm. He actually was huge in going to Texas A&M and them beating Texas A&M. Anyone go back and watch that game. Kelly Bryant was like the guy who won them that game at the end of the game. Obviously, as time went on, it just became obvious Lawrence was the best guy and he won the job. So, okay, fair enough. But Bryant, maybe if Lawrence starts the game and that's his whole thing, maybe they don't win that game. Maybe they don't go undefeated. Maybe something happens where they don't make the playoff or something because of it, right? Like that's something to think about. 2018 Notre Dame. Ian Book, when I was there covering the team in camp that year, it was pretty obvious Book was better than Brandon Wimbush, right? But the entire talk of everything what was going to happen was, I think Book is eventually going to be the quarterback, but they play Michigan week 1. And I think they're really going to need Wimbush as a runner in that game. And they did. And, maybe Book comes in and they win the game anyways. Who knows, right? But the point is they won the game with Brandon Wimbush, and his legs were big in that game. So obviously they made the switch. They probably should have made the switch maybe like a week or so earlier than they did, but they did make the switch and it didn't end up costing them or whatever. But would they have won the game with Ian Book at the beginning of the season? I don't know. But they made the bet. And one of the things that they thought was because Wimbush had played in those games before. He had won games for them. He had won games with his legs in like a big night game kind of thing. So they rolled with him. And obviously, if he stunk up the joint, they could have just switched to Book at any point. But it ended up being a big thing in them going to the playoff that year. So I think people should kind of look at it from that perspective, because that is definitely something like the best case scenario with Riley Leonard is this guy comes and he's like, man, like a rocket ship. He takes off. He has this kind of like the Penix Jr., the Knicks, the DJU, whatever, the big bump when he goes up, because Hartman basically was kind of the same guy that he was at Wake Forest in a lot of ways. But the best case scenario is Leonard becomes the guy who takes that big jump. And, all of a sudden it's like, man, Leonard is playing himself, this is like a Russell Wilson situation. All of a sudden he's playing himself into being a high pick or whatever. That'd be great. They go to the playoff. They do well, whatever. Yes. Gravy. Another scenario is he stinks up the joint, does not learn the offense well, and somebody else beats him out in camp. I think that's probably unlikely, but that's possible.
Yeah.
The other thing is that he is like good because you know he's good enough to help you win early on, and then he gets passed later on. Or because he runs a lot, he gets hurt. And you have these other guys. So it doesn't necessarily mean that someone isn't going to be experienced for 2025. Right. So I think that's kind of the way to look at it, is that like there's a lot of possibilities there. And Riley Leonard, if you get him, makes the roster better just automatically.
Yep. So there's going to be a lot going on. You're going to want to stay tuned into irishsportsdaily.com. Subscribe to this channel, like this channel, hit the notification bell so you know whenever we're going live. With a lot of, like, at this time, there's a lot of breaking news. I said on the last show, so we could be doing an impromptu show if the news is big. And so you're going to want to stay tuned in for us there. I would say monitor the Twitter, the irishsportsdaily.com as well. There may be some news pretty soon.
Get text. There's text alerts for ISD subscribers too. So
text alerts for ISD subscribers. Yeah. So you're gonna want to sign up for that. Look for some news and more portal guys. So check that out. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Our next scheduled show is Tuesday. So that's when we're definitely going to be back. We might be back before that though, given events. So have a good day, everyone. Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling.